what inspired this dialogue was the incredible number of women represented in our previous exhibition, Textiles That Talk. And the women single-handedly, generally speaking, started organization, and then the organization became organizations that lifted women from extreme risk. And one standout is with us today, and we're going to introduce, I'm going to actually do some introducing, excuse me, Robin Seyfert, who is the founder of Basha in Bangladesh, and we're going to hear a great deal from Robin about her on-the-ground experience, and I hope it's granular, because that is really effective. Just learning sort of the 411, how these organizations work and what their challenges and triumphs are. And then, of course, we have Javier Ubfal, World Bank Gender Group Senior Economist, and that's just pitch perfect for us right now, because we want to have a perspective about women who come on in, who are economic drivers of economic development. And why don't you have a seat? We have seats, we have plenty of seats. Thank you so much. See that seat over there? Great. So what's really remarkable is, I guess it was maybe 3.5 decades ago, the World Bank was the lead. I remember this because I've been a journalist for many more years than that. And I was covering the economic development, and women, the World Bank determined, were a leading indicator of economic growth in developing countries, if not the leading economic development indicator. And they really invested in this, and it's been 3.5 decades since that sort of oomph. And we have somebody here who's right on the money, who's going to tell us sort of from whence we've come in those 3.5 decades. And I'd like to start with that, if you don't mind. Don't talk as long as I did.
Thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, surrounding for so much beauty. This inspires our work every day, of course. Okay, so let me go to your question. I think that we can first focus on education and what has worked well so far, and then we move to what we still need to do more. In terms of education, results have been actually remarkable. Since 2015 alone, 50 million more girls are now attending school. And in 90% of countries in the world, we have more girls or the same number of girls as boys attending school. And this applies to all levels. In primary education, we have almost universal education everywhere, in most countries. In secondary education and tertiary education, girls are surpassing boys. And I give you a few examples of this and how we achieve this. You mentioned the World Bank. So we worked with the government of Bangladesh already in 1994, introducing a program that was cash transfers to families, but conditionally on girls attending secondary school and keeping enrolled. This pushed the numbers of girls attending secondary school from a ratio of 80 girls every 100 boys in 1994 to 2016 having 113 girls every 100 boys. So many more girls than boys now attending school, up to the point that gender equality includes also helping boys.
Hold on 1 second, going back to that 50 million. Give us the context. 50 million is a number, but what's that out of?
What is the?
Yeah, I mean, there are all of the numbers of uneducated girls. What's the 50 million from?
So we are still remaining many uneducated girls in some regions, no? To give you the context. So the progress happened in elementary school everywhere. So this is very significant. In terms of secondary school, we have gaps still in Africa and in fragile contexts. This is the chart.
Did you-
Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and
Sub-Saharan.
fragile and conflict countries.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, in Afghanistan, there were huge gains during the 90s, with around 1.5 million more girls getting into school that were almost fully reversed in the last years. So this implies also that this progress is fragile, and we need to keep on insisting and working on it all the time.
Okay, so you hit some areas where they've really surpassed expectations. Bangladesh is an interesting example. Who was the leader of Bangladesh in 1994? It was the woman her father was assassinated.
Oh,
Sheikh Hasina.
I interviewed her at the Willard.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she had jewels on her toes, on every toe. It was amazing.
She was just ousted.
Yes. Corruption and a few things, yeah. Anyway, tell us about the gains in Bangladesh that you've heard about or even seen in the context of your work. But first we want to hear about your work.
Okay, so I went to Bangladesh in 2006. It was kind of the end of the other government, and Sheikh Hasina came back into power in 2008 maybe. But so I went there to do HIV awareness with a public health degree, and discovered that there were many women who were being forced into prostitution through like very frightening things. Like one girl asked for directions somewhere and she was taken to a brothel. One girl thought she was going to the movies for her birthday, her 13th birthday, and she was sold to a brothel. So just things that we can't even imagine, and we can't even fathom those things happening to us. And yet it's a Muslim country. They were desperately ashamed of this, and they were desperate for another opportunity. So we started a training program for women who wanted to come out of prostitution, found huge interest and huge need, and that was great, but then realized they also need employment, because even the employment opportunities can be exploitative or unsafe, and many of them have this trauma and this background that makes regular mainstream employment difficult, if not impossible. And so I've been there almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in August, so I've seen a lot of change. The garment industry has grown hugely, and girls are being educated hugely. The middle class has grown from almost non-existent to very obvious and very there's little cafes everywhere, and people going out at any budget to do things, to do activities. So it's changed drastically, and the economy and the girls' role in that is huge. And yet, for those who aren't educated, it's actually worse, because even the garment industry, the government training program requires like an 8th grade education. The women we're working with have 0 education, where they were on the streets. Many of them were on the streets, or they were trafficked to India. They come back, they don't even know Bangla anymore. And so, there's just so few options for them. And so I started a company called Basha Boutique that provides employment. We also have a nonprofit that provides the training and support to help her be successful in her work. So it's kind of like a holistic program for those who are falling through the cracks of these other things.
So the surge in education for girls, some girls, for the textile industry girls, and the enlargement of the middle class, is there a connection there?
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, the women are working in the garments, and once they have their own income, they're making their own decisions. It's just really drastically changed society.
Yeah. So tell us more about that. And also in context of the transformative aspect of this, because women who have income have respect, have agency, have a lot of change, social change.
Definitely. So, first the positive side and then the negative side. So in terms of positive side, as education increases, we saw that also families investing more in girls. And this leads to amazing socioeconomic outcomes. So for example, women marry later now. and they have fewer kids because they choose to have fewer kids. This allows them a possibility to enter the labor market when the right conditions are set. The garment industry precisely gave them these right conditions. And when they do see, as you say, they invest more in their children, and they invest more in nutrition and health and education, and the generational cycle continues.
This is the best possible scenario, because they've avoided, they haven't even entered into, they're not escaping from, they were never snapped into that. And that's amazing, because the bank, social investments, all kinds of folks like your organizations have made it possible.
Exactly.
What's the flip side?
The flip side is that we still see that the human capital that girls acquire in education is not being used in the labor market. So still we have huge gaps in labor force participation around the world, even in Bangladesh. It improved, and now it's going down again with the collapse of the garment industry partially. So what girls are acquiring is not being used. And this has several reasons. So one of them is the type of education they get is not always in the sectors that are the best paid ones. No? This is linked to social norms because they are not supposed to go to some sectors according to what society believes. No? This is also due to the lack of care services, child care in particular, elder care in other countries, because women spend much more time dedicating to care services than men, and therefore they will not able to enter the job market or work as many hours as they would like to.
And you see this from the West Bank to Guatemala. You see women who are finally educated and excited to deploy that and socially, in terms of culture, custom, religion, and men, they can't do it. They just can't do it. I've seen changes in East Jerusalem. I've tracked that in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. It's an area I've studied, that female agency. And it's a very curious thing, especially in a Muslim population. But I'm sure, Robin, you saw a lot of those challenges.
Yeah, suddenly they have their own income and you can't tell them, stay home. Just get married at 16 or 18. The legal law is 18, but yeah, suddenly they have different dreams. But they're working 6 to 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So don't think that's an easy life either. Yeah, but like I said, there are still women falling through the cracks, and there's not a wide range of opportunities for them. There's very few other things, actually.
So I'm going to ask you both about, I'm going to ask you, Robin, is your organization, are there elements that you see that are replicable and that could be successful in other places, in other cultures? And I'm going to ask you about that multiplier effect, and let's look at that.
So we do handicrafts. I have an example here if you want to come look at it.
I did it.
So I found, when I first went to Bangladesh, I fell in love with the textiles. And so this is a very traditional handicraft. It's their quilting called kanta, which is layers of old sari cloth, which they then quilt together by hand. And so I think that is replicable and is being done, where people like look at the traditions of the society and say what has marketable value. For us, we changed it a bit. This has a indigo overdye because they like really bright colors, and not everyone likes really bright colors. And we work with survivors. We didn't choose our women because of their history in handicraft. We chose them because they were traumatized, basically. So those employing women like that is very challenging and not for the faint of heart. Our people wanting to put a lot of work into it. So it's replicable, but not quickly and not hugely. It's slow going to provide the training and the mental support, the counseling, the programs for children. We have daycare for children all the way from 0 to till they finish their school, which can be over 18. And so yeah, it's a big job. So not hugely replicable, but
Okay,
important and replicable.
I have one quick addendum here before I ask you to comment. We work with, as I said, a lot of women organizations just because they have the talent. And Multicolores is from the Northern Highlands in Guatemala. And Multicolores was ideated by a woman in Wisconsin who went to Guatemala and said, you know, that is so just painful to look at, much less do this backstrap loom, where you're on the floor, you know, the entire production is based on your spine. Why don't we teach you how to loop? And they were very receptive, and this woman said, look, I can teach you how to loop, and you can create the same beautiful Mayan designs, much more intricately, and much more easily with a loop. And I said, well, what are we gonna use for material? So she pointed outside to Gakko, which is discarded, you know, torn, ripped up, discarded t-shirts. And they cut them equidistant, you know, little snippets, and started to make these rugs out of secondhand t-shirts. Well, now the demand is so high that they go to the depot and they get all the, I mean, it's remarkable. They are now, they were the Textiles of the Year, named by some Canadian big situation. Was this last year? 2024. And now they're in Milan showing. And the State Department bought 3 of their big works from us, and they're installed in the permanent exhibition in Guatemala City in the U.S. Embassy. That's incredible, but they're highly replicable. And what they've done is they've written a book called Rug Money. And this is the 411 as a plan word, you know, drug money. But this is the money they get for all kinds of unbelievably uplifting, not just having a job and now what do I do? Or they have been lifted culturally, they're a huge part of society, and they're now in 9 or 10 or 11 different villages up and down the highlands, lifting women, and these are women living where femicide is one of the leading rates in the world, killing of women. It's pretty high. So I give you this as an incredible success story in a very tough environment for women, and they are the economic drivers of their communities. They have the water spouts. They have, yes, education, but you have to afford the uniforms to send these children to school. You can't just send your children to school. And if you have no money, you can't send your children to school because you can't give them a uniform. So Multicolores, now all the children have uniforms. Not only that, they have a roving healthcare van. Guatemalans don't have healthcare. And they have a mental health care component to the van too, which is big. So that's like on the other end, and having covered this for many, many years, I know the big successes, and I'm very excited about the 20-year holding on, really, you know, impacting. And I want to hear your perspective on where we are and where the big oomph is for success, because you know.
Yes, I mean, just as a clarification, I've been working on testing what solutions are replicable and efficient around the world to improve the life of women entrepreneurs in particular. Wow. We do this with studies that they do in medicine, where they see if a drug works or not, a treatment group and a control group, and then we follow them over time and see real outcomes for thousands of women in terms of
micro entrepreneurs?
Yeah, including micro entrepreneurs. For example, one of the findings we saw was that just training micro entrepreneurs on business practices, how to run your business, is not as efficient as training them in social emotional skills, such as innovativeness, personal initiative, proactiveness. These have been tested in Togo, and then in Jamaica, in Mexico, and other contexts. No? So now, what the World Bank Group does with this is to scale it up, no? And design this, make sure that this replicable evidence on what works actually is brought to scale. And we can do so by partnering with governments and then actually implement legal reforms and make sure that those reforms are actually implemented by working with communities to change social norms. Then we partner with the private sector to make sure funding goes to these initiatives. And then the last step, which is one of the most important ones, is partner with the grassroots organizations. No, because they are really the ones that can provide the last mile, reaching people, understanding what the real constraints are in terms of social norms, in terms of possibilities, in terms of trust, and they are going to be day by day working with them.
Have you worked with the World Bank?
No.
Have you worked with an international organization?
No.
Have you gotten funding from any kind of international organization?
No.
No.
Yes, and I tell you what, because it's very challenging context, because it's not that the World Bank can provide funding directly to these organizations. The World Bank works providing funding to governments. So these are loans to governments, sometimes with no interest rate or very low interest rate, depending on the income of the country. And then the governments, when they develop the projects together with the World Bank, they select the implementing agencies. And it's a challenge for some of the grassroots organizations to get there. That's why we are working on training many grassroots so that they have the capability of winning this procurement context. Yeah.
How quickly do you speak in Italian?
That's big. That's big.
That's amazing. And are you understanding all this in English? But you speak so fast in English. Yes, we're gonna, sorry. Hold on one second. We're gonna get through a couple more questions and then we're gonna open it up, okay? I'm sorry, it's really funny. Robin, you've worked in the public health space. What is the relationship, and there has to be one, between women's agency and women's health and economic development? Where were these women 20 years ago? Where were these women 10 years ago who you've been working with? And they're HIV positive, or they've been battered by trafficking?
I mean, it's just really hard because you're battling so many things. So, yeah, there's just so much misinformation and so much poor treatment and poor, like even, I met some of the, like barefoot doctors, you know, the women health workers who were traveling around talking to women, and they said they were having them they were only taking birth control when their husbands were coming home. So like the last weekend of the month. And I was like, that's not gonna work. And so, yeah, the first thing I was doing was like reproductive health training in rural areas, and the misinformation was insane. And so just teaching them to wash your menstrual products in a clean space and hang them up, and you know, take birth control all month, and just those things. It's a big climb. I have not been doing that with the regular population for a long time, so I hope it's improved. But yeah, clearly the more information they get, the better. If it's better if it's accurate information. The doctors there are really really poor advisors. We had some women come to us. They were trafficked because they were told by the doctor to take formula to give their infants formula, and then they couldn't afford the formula, and that's what led them into prostitution. And so, yeah, clear understanding, removing corruption from healthcare, those are really important goals. I don't think they're very far along in Bangladesh yet, but yeah, one of the things that's needed.
More obstacle than
I mean, there are like other things, like BRAC has an app where you can go on the app and you can find more accurate information. We actually bring in our own doctors and nurses because the information you get from mainstream doctors is horrible. But there are some apps in some ways to access better information. But yeah, it's an area of need for sure.
Can you comment on the health aspect?
Yes, I mean, so I want to give you an example of how we work, and this applies also to health. I mean, so for example, we partner with SEWA in India, Self-Employment Women Association, and yes, I mean, and they're doing an amazing job. So they also work with the poorest of the poor. And these are women that maybe never even spoke in public before. So they training on leadership, and you see the transformation. I went there 1 year, and then after another year, and these women were presenting to us, to the World Bank team, alone, and claiming what they were doing in their communities. And Seyfert is not only empowering women just in terms of leadership, but also economically. So they have developed these apps. So mentioned now app, and digital skills is going to be a challenge, but they are training first women on digital skills so that they know how to use the app, then develop the app, and this is designed for farms, but they also apps in the health sector. And these farmers can see the price of the products they are selling in the market through the app, and they can put their products into the app and then get contacted by people in the market that come and buy their products. And then one of the challenges they have is how to scale it up, because they're saying, yes, we're starting to sell, but we're selling a small things, we really want to get access to the market. So now we're working, and I'm gonna slow down because then you tell me I speak. We are working with the national procurement
You don't
in
have
India.
to go that slow.
The e-procurement portal, which has a quota that is even 3% for women. So you might think this is so low, but they're not reaching that quota. So we are working with them to develop training for women-led firms, including self-help organizations and cooperatives, in order to get access to this large contract from public procurement. And there is a quota also for these very, very small organizations that they have formed cooperatives with these old women that are farmer producers, now with the app, and then they are started selling to the government in large numbers. That's how you scale up. And that's how you start seeing that they move from just generating very small profits to increasing their profits, hire more women, and actually having impact. Because there is evidence all around the world that women-led firms are more likely to hire women than men-led firms. So the potential multiplier effect there is huge.
That's evident here at Amy Castle Gallery. Sorry. Last question, I have to ask this. Resources, Robin, I know you are not drawing from multinationals, but the U.S. is the largest shareholder in the World Bank still. The U.S. has been pulling out of all manner of organizations willy-nilly. Where does international finance look like for especially these pressing women's issues?
Yeah, so the good thing is that the World Bank has been resilient. So for gender work, we have a trust fund that is called Umbrella Fund for Gender Equality that has many funders, different governments and organizations. So now we are diversifying the funding base, and it is going to be working well. Of course, I mean, there's been challenges. One of the challenges, for example, is the way you present this work. So we like, yes, I mean, we like to organize the work around 2 points. I mean, gender equality is a human right, yes, and that's crucial. But the second one is that also is smart economics. It pays off. There is evidence that it's just addressing the gender gaps in employment around the world can increase the global development product, GDP, in 20%. Just doing that. And this is an argument that resonates in policy environments. It resonates, I mean, it's okay for the US as well, because they like to support women when they are inequalities. And then it resonates also with the Ministry of Finances, that are those who need to put the money for these interventions to work.
Equality or integration?
Both.
Okay. We open this up, and we have a hand. Oh, sorry, your hand was up 20 minutes ago, and then we'll go to you. Please. Name first.
My name is Jess.
Jess.
And I used to work for the World Health Organization. And you mentioned that in training women, it was less important, maybe business skills per se, but the pro-social skills or whatever. What about the pro-social skills, so to speak, of men who very often, when this starts in a village and the women are starting to make money, the men steal it and drink it. So what do you do, I mean, with the other half of the family?
That's an excellent point. And indeed, then there is a very robust evidence from academic papers showing that the reason why the interventions giving money, for example, or training to women-led firms don't work as well is because they don't invest the money in their business, but they invest the money in the business of their husband. And this is linked to social norms. No? So because the husband is the breadwinner and he's supposed to provide the money to the family. So what we do is to combine the interventions that support women-led firms with trainings on couples and on the importance of supporting women-led firms. This is working well in some contexts. We need to be careful because in some contexts it backfires. I mean, men don't like this, so
Where is it backfired? What country?
so we have some backfires in the north of Africa, for example. So the way you develop this is very important. So in some cases, we have involved community religion leaders, even in Muslim countries, where they pass the message to the community.
Give us an example. Give us a backfire example.
No, well, a backfire example, it was a program in, I think it was in the DRC, if I'm not wrong, where they were trying to get down the levels of gender-based violence that were high. So they developed a program and just basically telling men how important that is and giving cash transfer to women. You know, but and then saw that the money was returning to the women, and then the situation was worse. So it was quickly corrected, no? And they need to design complementary interventions. Now, I mean, and this unraveled also a whole practice at the World Bank of making sure that every product has provisions for controlling gender-based violence, no? Reporting and following up with any case.
Thank you. Very tough part of the DRC. Question, sir, what's your name, please?
It's Agri, A-G-R-I, Agri, and I'm from Albania, and I know quite a bit about international development, as do my wife and some of our dearest friends here. It's something in the Balkans known as the NGO mafia. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Diego. And then you mentioned the money is given to the governments, and the government then gives it to the implementing partners. Usually, many of the implementing partners are NGOs, and they usually, and I know that for a fact, in bed with the government, and so money is funneled through the government to their, favorite NGOs. Favorite NGOs also have, implement quotas, so they have 20% of their board or something, women. And from there, to jump to your observation, Amy, when you said integration and equality, and then women there, then they say, well, there are some women are more equal than the others. And then to give you an example, the deputy prime minister of Albania, up until 2 months ago, who was championed as, this is what women can do. Well, now she's standing trial for corruption, for embezzling funds to the hundreds of millions of dollars. So how do we, and this is not African continent, this is not Guatemala, this is right in the heart of Europe, and not just Albania, but other countries as well. What's your opinion, your view? Is there a solution to combat corruption? And then coming from that part of the world, I know how difficult that is, if not impossible. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so one thing that I would like to say, and this I've seen it, when there is a World Bank Group project, there is very strict procurement guidelines and controls and monitoring and supervision. So I'm not saying that corruption is going to be solved everywhere. No, of course, there's going to be remaining gaps because the levels are high in many countries. But at least when there is additional eyes on it, you improve the situation. And when there is a World Bank project with funding with the government, there is very strong, strict supervision. Mm-hmm. And then if a case is detected, there is real consequences. Mm-hmm. This can be the reason why many governments choose to have these large development projects, because they have more eyes, and also they receive additional support on how to address these issues ex ante, how to improve their monitoring and evaluation system to make sure that the money is used actually in benefiting people, and this is tracked and reported over time. So that's how much I can say. Then the issue of corruption is much broader, and we can discuss in another time how to address it.
And I suspect there's great data here and plenty plenty of fodder over there.
Mm.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's an excellent question. And there are places in the world that are have the highest NGO, you know, like the West Bank, of course. You're a part of the world. Not Albania, but I would say Bosnia. You know, there are places that are so NGO dense. The oversight, there is no oversight, and the governments that are dealing with them are generally very much on the take. And it's got to be extremely difficult for multinationals to really track where the money's going, with all due respect.
Thank you.
Lisa? And then, I'm sorry. And then yes.
So I have a question about the
Speak up
program.
just a bit so we can hear you.
So my name's Lisa. I have a question about the programs and again, what the women have, or girls or women have access to in terms of technology. Because that can also, I mean, I don't know if there's any kind of training in that or just to go,
In Basha,
yeah.
yes.
In the program, and so that they can start to teach, you can start to teach that there's access to different information than they may have gotten, and I think you were talking about apps, or you may have been, I'm sorry. But is there just some general sort of internet search skills or other things that the women have access to, or technology that they can access through your organization so that they can inform themselves more?
That's a good idea. We have not done that. We're basically starting at literacy, like learning the alphabet and basic literacy. And it's kind of a fairly recent thing, that the women are getting cell phones and they're learning how to use them. It's like within the past year probably. So we have not incorporated that. We're trying to think of what we can do, especially with the kids, as they are, we've had kids that have been with us since they were tiny.
Yeah, the scale of the program, how many folks?
At the moment, we have around 60 artisans. We have around 75 children. That's about half of where we were, but we've had to downsize in the past few years due to the economy. But we're on our way back up. We have 90 women waiting for work, and those women have all been through our training programs.
So wait a minute. You've had to downsize. You're an NGO. There's huge demand, but you've had to downsize because of the economy, because you have not been able to raise enough money to sustain this.
The company. So,
You're not
so
employed.
we're a company and we're a nonprofit. So the company, donations have been down too, but the company has, sales dropped significantly in October 2022. Our products were perfect for COVID. They were a perfect gift. People wanted to decorate their homes, so it was very perfect. So post-COVID, when people started going back into the world, that's when sales dropped, and that's when things have downsized. But yeah, we have potential to train about 100 women a year, but we would need to find employment for them either with us or externally. And so yeah, I want to hear about the entrepreneur training, because
So
that's one of our ideas. Is like, oh, what could we do?
You need the ability to pivot.
I need Basha to grow so we can employ those who really need to work in that space,
Yeah.
and then other opportunities for others who have the potential to work elsewhere.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Katie. Robin, I would just love to hear one or two examples of a real person.
Give us a profile.
Somebody who joined, how they, where they were coming from, what art they were drawn to.
Okay.
Soup to nuts.
Okay, I'll tell you Paki's story. Paki was a young girl, and her sister-in-law arranged a job for her in India. She thought she was going to go make saris, like embellish them with beading. And when she went, she found herself in a brothel. And this was her brother's wife that trafficked her. I'm not sure how long she was there, maybe 5 or more years. By the time she came back, she was so traumatized she couldn't really speak. She couldn't remember much Bangla. She was speaking Hindi. And she was referred to us from another organization that does the legal piece and the repatriation piece. And so they referred her to us. She was in our transition home, and she did our training program, and she worked with us for some years. And so it was a very long walk until she was emotionally stable. She was able to speak again. She's able to communicate. She's able to control her anger, stemming from trauma and being triggered and all those things. And eventually she did. She got married about a year ago and left our program, and she's like living a very normal life, which that's one of the things that women find with us. They're able to escape the stigma. I've been working at Basha, like no one has to know what happened before Basha. So that's one of the powerful things that happens. Some women never even work for us. They're just there 2 months, and then they say, yeah, I was at Basha, and no one has to know that they were actually in a brothel or in Saudi Arabia or in India being abused. So.
Any other questions from the group?
What are the most pressing things you're working on now?
So let me focus on women-led firms. I think it's relevant for this context. We have been reviewing the constraints that women-led firms face around the world, and we can mainly group it in 4 things. So the first one is around training skills. I mean, we mentioned the importance of social-emotional skills on top of technical skills. There's even a training for women affected by trauma that was very effective in terms of making them think in images about their future, and this has been improved very efficiently in terms of improving their business outcomes. So this is one, skills. The second gap that is huge is access to finance. Because women are less likely to own property, they are less likely to get loans from formal institutions, and in some cases even from informal institutions. And when they get loans from informal institutions, they're smaller, and maybe they're not enough to develop their business. So we are working in developing new products with financial institutions that are in some cases collateral free. In some cases, they use alternative sources of collateral, like model collateral, or they use psychometrics, so measures that can predict if you're going to repay a loan or not. And by the way, women are much more likely to repay loans than men. There is evidence everywhere that this is true. So using this data can lead to much more finance getting to women-led firms. So this is the second constraint that we're working a lot, and also eliminating barriers at the legal level with the government so that there is guarantees of equal access to credit for men and women in the law. But then, of course, it has to be in practice. The third one is access to markets. I mentioned before this work with the procurement agencies so that women can get access to larger markets. Women are usually less likely to network and reach providers and different buyers because also of mobility constraints. There is no safe transportation in many countries, including Bangladesh and India. There is gender-based violence. So this opportunity to network and access to larger contracts can be crucial. And finally, the largest sector and constraint of work is contextual constraints, including access, as I mentioned, to care services, transformation in legal constraints around safety, entrepreneurship, and financial inclusion, and norms, how you actually implement what the law says in practice. So working with community to change social norms in a way that help women invest in their business, expand, and reinvest in their families and communities.
Robin, does that resonate?
Yes. Yeah, there's so many barriers, but lots of opportunities. The women, especially in Bangladesh, well, I'm biased maybe, but any chance, any opportunity, they're just ready to run with it. And they're very highly motivated, want to give their children a different life than they had, and do have their husbands trying to steal their money and fight their husbands to not put their children into work as children, child laborers. So yeah, it's worth the investment. It's a lot of hope and a lot of transformations possible if they're given a chance.
Thank you.
I want to thank you all for coming and listening to, people struggling. The common thread here is definitely mental health You spent an inordinate amount of time just lifting someone so they could stand. And of course, that was your number one thing that you illuminated. But the world's struggling. We're struggling. More than half of us are struggling with mental health, and that's just the beginning. And forget about all the other issues confronting folks in developing countries. What's remarkable is women who are confronted with so much. We're looking at them, folks who are struggling to get out of bed, and then we're looking at incredible entrepreneurial opportunities. And we don't ever want to forget that, because women are a huge source of economic growth, if not in gender. Have you quantified this? Are we numero uno?
Yeah.
We're numero uno. So guys, back up. What is that data?
Well, I told you before that it's 20% effect, but so if you were to just have equal employment levels between men and women, the GDP will be 20% higher. But in India, for example, where female labor participation is so low, promoting female labor participation and eliminating the constraint of women-led firms can create millions of jobs for women and for men as well.
Yeah, that's the great news. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.